What's going on, everybody? I'm Patrick Chapla, founder of Powlax and creator of Powlax Master Coach. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the 2017 US Lacrosse rules for the 12U age division. So US Lacrosse pretty much rewrote the rule book for youth lacrosse in 2017 because a lot of players were leaving the sport by the time that they hit 14. So all of these rules are designed with the intent of creating an environment that is more inclusive and a better overall environment for all players so that more players will continue to play the sport throughout high school and on into their lives. If you'd like to access the entire 2017 Youth Boys Lacrosse Rulebook, you can do so by going to uslacrosse.org, clicking on the Coaches heading, then the Boys Rules heading, scrolling down a bit, and then clicking on the 2017 Youth Rule PDF or ebook. In this video, we're going to start by defining every age group and then talk about the field that the 12U age group will use. Then we're going to discuss the mission behind the 12U rules, as well as some of the rules that the 12U players are going to have to get used to as they transition from the 10U rules to the 12U rules. Finally, we're going to cover all the rules by covering the game and equipment, game personnel, the play of the game, and then fouls and penalties. US Lacrosse defines each age group by the players' birth dates, and so they communicate that with the average age of the players in that group and then the letter U, meaning under. Each age group also loosely correlates to the player's grade and graduation year from high school, but when we're trying to classify an individual player, we will be relying on that player's specific birth date and not the grade or the graduation year from high school. US Lacrosse has created an easy-to-use spreadsheet defining the player's segments. For instance, a player born between September 1st, 2009 and August 31st, 2010 is a 7U player and is probably going to be in first grade, although there may be some exceptions. The key here is that all age group affiliations will be mandated by age and not grade or graduation year. Each year on September 21st, all players will move from one age group into another and a new yearly cycle will begin. You can find the entire age segmentation spreadsheet by going to uslacrosse.org and clicking the Boys Rules subheading under the Coaches link at the top of the page, and then scrolling down till you see the link at the right-hand side. As players progress through the youth lacrosse landscape, every 2 years the rules are going to change. So anybody who is in the 6U bracket or under will use the 6U rules. Then at 7U, they will change to the 8U rule specifications. Then once they hit 9U, they will switch to the 10U specifications. When they hit 11U, they'll go to the 12U specifications. And when they hit 13U, they will play under the 14U specifications. So every 2 years, the rules and sometimes the field will actually change as players progress through their development. The 12U through NFHS field is the traditional full-size lacrosse field. It is 110 yards long and 60 to 70 yards wide. As we outline the field, we will move from the center of the field outward, covering the actual field first and then the sideline elements after. The midline divides the field in half and has 2 elements. First, in the center of the midline, there will be a 4-inch X, square, or circle called the face-off X. Second, 20 yards towards each sideline from the face-off X will be a 20-yard wing line that will straddle the midline. Next are the restraining lines. The restraining lines move from sideline to sideline and are placed 20 yards from the midline on both sides of the field. Next, we have the box. The box is a rectangle made by using the restraining line, end line, and a continuation of the wing lines between the restraining line and end line. Finally, 2 6-foot by 6-foot goals with a 9-yard radius crease will be placed 40 yards from the midline and 50 yards from the end line in the center of the field. The coaches area and benches for both teams and the table area will be placed on one sideline. The table area is 20 yards wide, 6 yards deep, and straddles the midline in the same fashion as the wing line with 10 yards on each side of the midline. The timer and scorekeeping tables should be placed behind this area. The coaches area and bench for each team are placed on the sides of the table area and are 15 yards in length on each side. The coaches area is 6 yards deep and the benches are just behind the coaches area. Players must stay in the bench area and not in the coaches area to allow people at the timers and score table to see the field. On the opposite side of the field is the parents and spectators sideline. There may be a dotted line 6 yards from the sideline called the limit line. Spectators should watch from behind this line for the safety of the players and spectators. There is a modified field for the 12U division that can be found in the US Lacrosse Youth Rulebook. We, however, will be covering the game as it will be played on a full-size lacrosse field. The mission behind the 12U rules is to create an environment that players want to come back to again and again. For players who are entering the sport, it's going to be kind of tough because there is a vast difference in the mental, physical, and lacrosse development of every player. Parents, refs, coaches, and spectators should emphasize having fun, trying to use the technical abilities that they've been learning in the game, building a competitive nature, as well as sportsmanship. The overall emphasis is to instill a love for the game, excitement for playing, while developing skills that they will be able to use in any future endeavor. The experience should provide opportunities for every player to touch the ball, experiment, learn new technical skills, as well as learning how to implement those technical skills into the tactical elements of the game. Moving from the 10U to the 12U rules, players will need to get used to full-length fields, playing 6v6 or 9v9 with goalies rather than 5v5, offsides now being possible, 6x6 regulation goals, timeouts, overtime, wing players on the face-offs, full-length sticks of all types, and coaches are now restricted to the coach's box area on the sideline. Also, raking ground balls is no longer a technical foul. The game will be played 7-on-7 with 6 field players and 1 goalkeeper per team, or 10-on-10 with 9 field players and 1 goalie per team. Keeping score is optional but not recommended by US Lacrosse. Limited stick checks are permitted and the game will be played with a NOCSI certified lacrosse ball. The competition will consist of 4 10-minute quarters with a 2-minute break between quarters and a 5-minute halftime. In this division, players will be able to use full-size lacrosse sticks of all types. I do, however, recommend that defensive sticks be cut down so that the height of the stick is about up to their nose. For field players, the head of the stick has to be at least 6 inches wide at its widest point, as well as 10 inches tall from the top of the head to the bottom of the sidewall. So this does not include the throat area. Any shooting strings on the head have to be within 4 inches from the top of the head. So from here to here has to be less than 4 inches. Also, any of the strings that hang off of the head have to be at a maximum 2 inches long. For short sticks, the length of the head and shaft combined from end to end has to be between 40 and 42 inches. Defensive sticks have to fall between 52 inches and 72 inches from the top of the head to the bottom of the shaft. If we're playing this game 7-on-7, there can only be 2 long sticks on the field at a time. If we're playing 10-on-10, there can only be 3 long sticks on the field at a time. So this does not match up with the tradition of having a long stick midfielder on the field. There are no long stick midfielders for the 12U division. All players must have a lacrosse helmet that meets NOCSI ND041 specifications at time of manufacture. It will have this logo imprinted on the helmet shell, as well as a warning sticker. An oral mouthguard or mouthpiece. Gloves designed for boys lacrosse. Shoulder pads designed for boys lacrosse. Arm pads designed for lacrosse. Athletic shoes or cleats. And an athletic protective cup, which I actually never wore, so I'm kind of glad they're making a requirement, but I hated them when I was little. Rib pads, which go right here, are recommended, but they are not required. Goalie sticks, however, can be between 37 inches and 54 inches long. There's no actual mention of the regulations of goalie head size, but I'm pretty sure that if you just get any regulation goalie head, that will be suitable. All goalies must have a lacrosse helmet that meets NOCSI ND041 specifications at the time of manufacture. It will have this logo on the shell of the helmet, as well as a warning sticker. Throat protector that is designed for lacrosse that will hang below the face mask of the helmet to protect a player's throat. An oral mouthguard or mouthpiece. Lacrosse gloves designed specifically for boys lacrosse, and hopefully goalie gloves, because goalie gloves have much bigger thumb protection, because as goalies are making saves, sometimes the ball hits their thumbs and the ball can break their thumbs. A chest protector designed for boys lacrosse. Athletic shoes or cleats. An athletic protective cup. And then rib pads, arm pads, thigh pads, knee pads, and shin pads are all recommended but cannot increase the size of the goalie significantly. No ice hockey, field hockey, or box lacrosse goalie pads. Goalie sticks for this division have to be between 40 inches long and 72 inches long. There's no mention in the rulebook about specifications for goalie heads, so as long as you buy a regulation goalie head, you should be fine. Coaches are not allowed on the field at any time and are confined to the coaching area. US Lacrosse recommends that 2 certified officials be used for every game. The head coaches will appoint a scorekeeper who will keep score during the match. Before the game, a coin toss will be held to determine which goal each team will defend, as well as who the first alternate possession is. The winning team of the coin toss will be able to choose either which goal they want to defend, deferring the alternate possession to the other team, or they can choose to be the first alternate possession and allow the other team to select which goal they would like. Before each game, the official will bring both teams to the center of the field and line them up facing each other with their left shoulders pointing towards the goal that they are defending. He will then explain any ground rules and emphasize safety, fair play, and good sportsmanship. To start play for 7-on-7, each team must have one player at the center X taking the faceoff, one player behind the wing line or with his foot touching the sideline if you're playing on a modified field, 2 defensive players in their defensive box, 2 offensive players in the offensive box, and a goalie in the crease area. When the whistle blows, the player at the wing area will be released. All players are confined to their original positions until either team gains possession, the ball goes out of bounds, the ball crosses into the restraining area, play is stopped for a time-serving foul, or a whistle resumes after a non-time-serving foul. When any of these events occur, the face-off has ended. In the event that a player is serving time in the penalty box, there must be 3 players, including the goalie, in the defensive area and 2 players in the offensive area. If 2 players are in the penalty box, a defensive player may come out of the defensive box to take the faceoff, but he must stay on sides. To start play for 10-on-10, each team must have one player at the center X taking the faceoff, one player behind each of the 2 wing lines, 3 defensive players in their defensive box, 3 offensive players in the offensive box, and the goalie in the crease area. When the whistle blows, the players from the wing areas will be released. All other players are confined to their original positions until either team gains possession, the ball goes out of bounds, the ball crosses into the restraining area, play is stopped for a time-serving foul, or a whistle resumes play after a non-time-serving foul. When any of these events occur, the face-off has ended. In the event that a player is serving time in the penalty box, there must be 4 players, including the goalie, in the defensive area and 3 players in the offensive area. If the ball goes out of bounds, the ball will be awarded to the team that didn't touch it last before it goes out of bounds, except for on shots, in which case the ball will be given to the team with a player who is on the field that is closest to the ball when it goes out of bounds. If the ball gets caught in the equipment of any player or is withheld from play in any way, the ball will be awarded to the opposite team. A team is considered offsides in 7-on-7 when more than 5 players are on the defensive side of the field, or there are more than 4 players on the offensive side of the field. Players in the penalty box count towards both sides. A team is considered offsides in 10v10 when there are more than 7 players on the defensive side of the field, or more than 6 players on the offensive side of the field. Players in the penalty box count towards both sides. If the ball gets caught in the equipment of any player or is withheld from play in any way, the ball will be awarded to the opposite team. Play will begin at the beginning of each period and after every goal with a face-off at the center X, which will be conducted by the official. Goals will be disallowed if the period of play has expired, the offensive player has committed a foul, or if the offensive player who scored is found to have an illegal stick. Contact is allowed in 5 scenarios: legal holds, legal pushes, trying to edge out a player to get a loose ball, as a defensive player who is trying to redirect an offensive player, and then incidental contact. Legal holds can be administered to an opponent who has the ball or is within 3 yards of a loose ball and must be done to the front or sides of the other player. If it's to the back, it has to have equal pressure. Players may hold as long as both hands are closed around the stick and they are using their shoulder, their forearm, or their closed fist. A legal push happens after contact has been made. So a legal push is when you're already making contact with a player through a hold and you are pushing them off. There should never be a push that is violent contact in this division. Pushes can be made to the front or side of an opponent, and that opponent has to be in possession of the ball or within 3 yards of a loose ball. Players who push must do so with both hands closed around the stick and use their closed fist, forearm, or shoulder. Contact can also be made when positioning yourself to try to get a loose ball. This is often called boxing out, and what it entails is if another player is coming to get the ball and I want to get the ball, I can step in front and kind of edge him out to try to get the ball, and in that sense, I can make contact in that way. Defensemen can make contact with offensive players who have the ball in an attempt to redirect them. Finally, incidental contact is any contact that was not on purpose. All stick checks must be made using 2 hands closed around the stick and be administered to an opponent's stick or gloved hand which is on the stick. This can only be done when a player is in possession of the ball or within 3 yards of a loose ball. The only checks that are allowed at this level are poke checks, lift checks, and downward checks that originate from below both players' shoulders. No offensive players can enter the crease, but they can reach in to try to gather a loose ball. Defensive players can pass through the crease, but they must not have an intent of blocking a shot. The only player who can legally stop a shot in the crease is a fully equipped goaltender. No opposing player can make contact with the goalie or his cross while it is maintained within the crease area. There are no live or on-the-fly substitutions in 12U. Only whole team substitutions are allowed, where all of the players on the field come off the field and all the players on the bench go onto the field. The only time that an individual player is allowed to be subbed is if that player is injured, in which case he can come off the field. In order to sub, you just have to substitute on a dead ball, whether it was a goal scored or the ball is out of bounds. In the event that play is continued for too long without stoppage and the ability for the players to sub, the official can suspend the game and allow for the substitution. Each team gets 2 timeouts per half as well as 1 timeout in each overtime period. The referee can stop play at his discretion. If at any point in time a player loses his equipment or appears to be injured, play should be stopped immediately. If at any time the referee cannot determine who should be awarded the ball, the alternate possession rule will be in effect. So the team that lost the coin toss at the beginning of the game will be granted possession first, and it will alternate from one team to the other after an award has been given. The referee will need to keep track of which team has the alternate possession throughout the game. The scrum situation rule is a brand new rule for 2017, and it pretty much just says that if at any point in time the ball is on the ground and multiple players are fighting over it and it cannot be picked up easily, the official can blow the whistle to stop play and award the ball to the team via the alternate possession rules so that we keep the game going. Personal fouls are serious in nature and include either a safety violation or a sportsmanship violation. And so when a personal foul occurs at the 6U level, play will be stopped immediately whether that team has possession of the ball or not. And that moment will be used to explain to the player what he did and most basically be used as a teaching moment. Then that player will have to leave the field and will be replaced by another player. And so at no point in time will a team be man down in the 6U game. If the personal foul occurred on the defensive end of the offended team, the ball will be granted to the offended team at the center X. If the personal foul happened on the offensive end of the offended team, the ball will be placed as close to where the ball was when the foul occurred and close to the sideline. Personal fouls include cross-check, illegal body check, checks involving the head or neck, illegal cross, use of illegal equipment, slashing, tripping, unnecessary roughness, unsportsmanlike conduct, fouling out, and ejection. Each one of these personal fouls is explained in a video following the technical foul video. Technical fouls are fouls of a less serious nature that involve some sort of unfair advantage. So when a player commits a technical foul, it pretty much means he did something illegal to gain an advantage on another player. When a technical foul occurs, play will be stopped immediately, and the player who did the foul will be explained what he did, and the ball will be awarded to the other team. The ball will be awarded as close to the location of the foul as possible. Technical fouls include crease violations and goalie interference, holding, illegal offensive screening, illegal procedure, conduct foul, interference, offside, pushing, stalling, warding off, withholding the ball from play, and raking the ball. The final rule for youth lacrosse involves terminating a game, and it pretty much says that a ref should do all he can to avoid terminating a game by giving players fouls, ejecting players, and trying to keep the game under control. But if at any point in time the game gets out of control, whether it's coaches, parents, players who are flagrantly doing the same foul or they're fighting or whatever it is, he can terminate the game. If a game is terminated, it's recommended that the game go into the books as a 1-0 win for the team who was not creating whatever the problem was, and that all stats should count towards league records. A cross-check is any time that a player makes contact with another player, whether they have the ball or not, with the space between their hands on the shaft. So right here, you are not allowed to push or hold any player with the middle of your stick. All holds or things of that nature must be with the closed hand on the player. So A couple of discrepancies with this as you'll get into some games. Once you get to higher levels, it seems like a lot of people are allowing cross checks to happen, and they may be, but for the most part, players are trying to direct other players with their fists, which are on the stick, and not the shaft in between their hands. At younger levels, I still recommend that players play defense with their hands like this and not like this, because they will learn how to control and how to use punches with their hand rather than cross checks. Now, you may run into a ref who really wants them to go like this. Just have the kids adapt that way, but just make sure that players are learning in a way where they know that their hand can touch the opponent, but that the stick between them cannot. Illegal body checking can happen in 5 main ways. The first way is if you hit a player who is not in possession of the ball or within 3 yards of a loose ball that is on the ground or in flight. The second way that an illegal body check can occur is if a player body checks another player above the shoulders, below the waist, or from behind. Third, it is an illegal body check if you hit a player who has any part of his body other than his feet on the ground. So if his knee is on the ground, if his hand is on the ground, if any other part of his body is on the ground, you cannot hit that player. The fourth way that illegal body checking can happen is if you hit a defenseless player. And so a defenseless player can be a lot of different things. Here are the 3 main things that they can be. First, if a player is running up the field and is not looking where he's going and you hit him from his blind side, that is an illegal body check. Also, if you hit a player who is bending down to scoop a ball and his head is down, you cannot hit a player whose head is down like that either. Also, if a player is about to catch the ball, say he's catching an over-the-shoulder pass on a clear, and you hit him this way, that is an illegal body check, even if, as he catches the ball and turns towards you, that you hit him then. Pretty much, if he has no time to prepare to get hit, that is an illegal body check. And this is one of the rules that's going to be put down really hard because safety is a humongous concern with US Lacrosse this year. The fifth way we can have an illegal body check is an excessive body check, and that is any time that a player ducks his head or his shoulder and hits another player with the intent to put the other player on the ground. Finally, with body checking, it is not considered an illegal body check if one player is going to hit the other and the other player turns his body and makes the player who is going to hit him in the back. If a player has time to react to a player who is going to hit him and he turns his back so that he hits him from behind, that is not an illegal body check. Checks involving the head and neck are absolutely extremely important, especially this year as safety is becoming such a huge concern. So here's what you need to know about checks to the head or neck area. First, no contact is allowed to the head and neck area with the cross or with any of your forearms, hands, shoulders, any of that. But so what will constitute a personal foul is if any follow through is seen. So say you're playing defense and you're riding someone's shoulder and they kind of duck and it comes up into their neck area. You have to pull your stick off and then regain leverage on their hips or on their arm, and you cannot follow through in that area. Now, some refs are going to call you as your stick slides up and hits them in the neck, but the important thing is that there's no intent to injure by actively hitting him. The second way you can get a personal foul with checks to the head or neck is by swinging your stick and slashing them in the head or neck. Now, with this, a lot of times a slash will not be called if the stick just barely touches the helmet of a player. So if there's no real impact, sometimes a ref will call a brush and that will not be considered a foul. Finally, this is one of the checks to the head or neck area that a lot of people don't think about, but if the player who is in possession of the ball ducks his head to initiate contact with another player, this is usually called spearing. That is absolutely a personal foul as well. I don't believe a lot of refs are going to call a penalty. They'll probably just turn the ball over, even though any type of spearing should be a personal foul. An illegal stick penalty will be called anytime a referee finds that a player's stick does not meet the regulations that it must. An illegal equipment penalty will be called anytime a ref sees that a player is not using equipment that is specifically designed for that purpose as well as for lacrosse. So gloves have to have their entire palm. They can't have big holes in the palm or in the fingers, which you can also use tape if your gloves are kind of falling apart. And also another one of the biggest things that this rule applies to is shoulder pads. Some of the older shoulder pads actually don't have bicep pads that will come off. And if you cut the pad in any way and you modify it at all, it is no longer a legal pad. You have to have shoulder pads that have the Velcro on-off bicep pads if you want to take them off. Slashing mostly happens when a player does not hit stick when they are trying to make a stick check. Here are 4 ways that slashes most often happen. First, and a lot of people don't know this about slashing penalties, if at any point in time a player is swinging uncontrollably, it will be called a slash. Whether or not it hits the stick of the other player or doesn't hit them at all or anything else in that. If a player is swinging their stick uncontrollably, 2 hands, 1 hand, it will always be a slash. Next, a slash will be called any time that a player tries to strike another player with their stick and hits anything other than the stick or the gloved hand which is on a stick. So if a player is carrying one-handed, the other player cannot hit this arm. They cannot hit their waist or any other thing. The one time that this is okay and it will not be called a slash is if the player who is carrying the ball turns to defend their stick so that they do not get checked. So if a player is trying to throw a check and I turn and their stick hits my arm because I'm trying to protect, that will not be a slash. Now, also with this, anytime a stick hits a player's head, it should be a slash, but if it barely touches the helmet and there's no real impact, oftentimes referees will call that a brush, which is not a slash. Finally, all one-handed checks are considered slashes. Now, there's one big exception to this. If a player is trying to make a two-handed check and one of his hands accidentally slides off, that will not be considered a slash. Tripping is an obstruction on any part of the body below the waist of a player, and this has to be a primary action where if a player steps in front of another player and trips them, that would be a trip. If they just throw their stick in between their legs, that would be a trip. But the one place that a lot of people think is a trip when it's not is if I'm running down the field and a player tries to check my bottom hand, but they miss my bottom hand and it goes down to hit my leg. That should not be considered a trip because that player was not intending on messing with my legs. Similarly, if a player is going to scoop a ground ball and another player trips over that stick, that should also not be a trip. Unnecessary roughness can happen in 3 main ways. First is any violent infraction with a push or a hold. So anytime you are extremely violent when you are pushing or holding, that will be an unnecessary roughness call. The next one is anytime that a player is set up to have a pick and he's got his pick set. Defensive players are not allowed to run through that player. They must try to get around that player, and if they do hit him, it will be an unnecessary roughness foul. The final unnecessary roughness foul happens when a player does something that is avoidable and also with violent intent. So anytime a player does something that is violent and could have been avoided and isn't really part of the game, that will be an unnecessary roughness foul. Unsportsmanlike conduct fouls are divided into 2 categories, releasable and non-releasable. The 3 releasable unsportsmanlike conduct fouls are, first, if a player continually commits the same technical foul over and over and over again. The second one is if a player is in play and he gets pushed out of bounds or he runs out of bounds, if he does not come back into the field of play as quickly as possible, that can be a releasable unsportsmanlike conduct foul. And finally, the third one is that if a player continually is not subbing the correct way. So if he continually subs by not running through the box, or in a lot of the lower youth divisions does not wholesale sub every player off and every player on, that will be an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. Non-releasable unsportsmanlike conduct fouls include things like taunting, disrespecting another player or teammate, discriminating against somebody for anything like race, color, religion, anything of that nature. This includes things that are body language oriented as well as verbally oriented, and they will not be tolerated by players, coaches, or referees, or even spectators for that matter. The second set of non-releasable unsportsmanlike fouls include everybody in your community. That means parents who are on the sideline, assistant coaches, players who are not actually playing, coaches, players, everybody, anybody in the community can get an unsportsmanlike conduct non-releasable foul if they do these following 4 things. First is initiating an argument with a referee after a call has been made, or if they are trying to influence the call that a referee is making. Second is using profane or inappropriate gestures or motions or language at any point in time during the game. Third is to bait or call unneeded attention to yourself by showboating, celebrating, anything that the referee feels is unnecessary. And the final unsportsmanlike conduct foul that is non-releasable is any time that you deliberately grab the ball during a game. This is mostly used during a face-off, but sometimes it happens in the actual game. But so you can absolutely never grab the ball with your hand while playing the game of lacrosse. Any player who accumulates 3 personal fouls or 5 minutes of foul time will be fouled out of a game. And so once a player is fouled out, another player from the same team will enter the field after the player who fouled out would have been able to go onto the field had they not fouled out. A player, coach, or anybody that is affiliated with your team can be ejected from a game for 1, trying to strike an opponent or leaving the bench area when an altercation on the field starts, also getting a second non-releasable unsportsmanlike conduct foul, and third, any action that is deemed flagrant misconduct by the officials. The crease violation and keeper interference section of the US Lacrosse playbook pretty much talks about what should happen and how the rules should be applied if the defensive team has the ball and there is an infraction. But so, just so we cover all of the bases, we have to make sure we know that at no point in time can an offensive player step in the other team's crease. So if we're playing offense and a player on our team steps in the crease, it'll be a technical foul, the whistle will blow, and the ball will be awarded to the other team. But so the US Lacrosse rulebook talks about what should happen if the defensive team has the ball. If one of our players does step in the crease when the other team has the ball, it will be a play-on situation and there will be a flag down, which is going to be a technical foul. So if you can think about a scenario for this, if a goalkeeper is running around the crease and an offensive player riding him runs through the crease, it will be a flag down, but it will also be a play-on situation. Any crease violation or goalie interference call that happens that is not a technical foul in nature will result in a play-on. And so if the goalie already has the ball and he's throwing an outlet pass and the outlet pass is caught and their team clears it across the midfield line, then the play-on will be over and nothing will happen. But if that outlet pass is dropped, the whistle will blow and the goalie who threw the ball's team will be granted possession over the midfield line. If the play-on happens when the goalie does not have the ball and the goalie picks the ball up, the play-on will be over right then. An illegal hold can happen in a multitude of ways, and here are some of the examples. First, if a player tries to use the handle between their hands, this section right here, that will be an illegal hold call. Second, anytime a player steps on another player's stick and holds it down, that is a hold call. The third example of an illegal hold is if a player tries to hold a player with his stick. So if I'm defending a player and a player is right in this area and he's trying to move that way and I'm holding him back with my stick, that is an illegal hold. And with that, the fourth example of a hold actually happens if a player is trying to move and I am holding him against my body with my stick. So I cannot hold him against my stick and I cannot hold him if he's trying to move away. The fifth illegal hold that we have is if I try to hold a player with my hand off of the stick. So I have to have both hands on my stick to do a legal hold, and if I take my hand off and try to hold with this hand, that is illegal. The sixth illegal hold is if I try to hold the cross of an opponent with any part of my body. So I can't grab their cross with my hand and I cannot step on their stick. The seventh and final illegal hold happens on the face-off, and it pretty much just states that I cannot pin another player's head down during the face-off. So if I lose a face-off and my stick is on top of theirs, I'm not allowed to hold their stick on the ground. To go over an illegal offensive screen, first let's talk about what a good screen or good pick is. A good pick happens when my feet are no wider than shoulder width apart, my feet are stationary and I am stationary, so I'm not trying to bump anyone, and my stick is in tight towards my body. So an illegal offensive screen is when any of those items don't happen. So I'm not allowed to be moving to bump another player. I'm also not allowed to have my feet wider than shoulder width, and I cannot have my stick extended trying to bump another player. Illegal procedure is any action on the part of the players or substitutes of a technical nature that is not in conformity with the rules and regulations governing the play of the game. Rather than narrate every single illegal procedure call, I'm just going to put them on the screen and scroll through them. So at any point in time, if you want to stop and read the illegal procedure rulings, you can. Conduct fouls are given mostly to coaches and for the following reasons. First, a coach is not allowed to go on the field, and this is one that I have to work on a lot, and all of my assistant coaches and players know that at any point in time, if I am on the field in any type of manner, they have the ability to come and get me off of the field. The second conduct foul can happen if any other personnel is within the coaching area. The only people that are allowed in the coaching area is the coaches. The third type of conduct foul is if any person associated with the team, whether it be a player, parent in the stands, a coach, or anybody else who has an electronic device that is radioing in information to a player on the field. So you can't have an earpiece on the field and be communicating with the player. The final conduct foul is if any person associated with the team commits any type of misconduct towards an official. Interference is when any player impedes the movement of another player when that player does not either have the ball or is within 3 yards of the ball, whether it is on the ground or in flight. A team is considered offsides when they have more than 7 players on the defensive side of the field or more than 6 players on the offensive side of the field. If at any point in time that happens, that team is considered offsides. There are a few ways that we can incur a push technical foul. The first of which is any push or thrust that is done to the rear of an opponent. That is a push from behind. That is a technical foul. The second way a push can incur is if we incur a violent blow. So at no point in time should we be hitting players with a lot of force. Contact should be made and then a push off should be done to be a legal push. An illegal push is anything that does not meet these specifications. First, it must be above the waist and below the neck and be to the front or side of an opponent. Also, that opponent must either be in possession of the ball or be within 3 yards of the ball that is either on the ground or in flight. The player doing the pushing must have both hands on the stick and use his gloved hands, forearm, or shoulder. A stalling warning can be called at any point in time when a team is not actively going towards the goal. And once a stall warning is called, in which case the referees will go like this, the offensive team has to keep the ball within the restraining line and end line as well as the extended wing lines like we showed you. So they have to keep the ball in the box. The stall warning will end if a goal is scored or the defensive team gains possession of the ball. If at any point in time a player on the offensive team that is within the stall warning steps outside of the box parameters, the ball will be awarded to the other team. During the last 2 minutes of a game, the stall warning is in effect for the team that is winning as long as they are winning within 4 goals. So if they have a 5th goal, there is no need to have a stall warning within the last 2 minutes. Warding off happens when any player who has possession of the ball uses his hand or arm to push off the stick or body of another player. So whether or not you have both hands on the stick or have one hand on the stick, you cannot push off. A lot of players that are playing nowadays do really good job of having both hands on the stick and using their elbow to manipulate the stick checks of another player, and that is now illegal. One thing that you can do though is you can try to block checks that come in as long as you are not moving your arm. So you cannot push off with your elbow even if you have 2 hands on the stick, and you cannot push off regardless if you have 1 hand on the stick. Withholding the ball from play pretty much means that you cannot at any point in time withhold the ball by laying on the ball, trapping it with your stick. And if you end up doing this multiple times by just trapping the ball wherever it may be, this can actually result in an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. The final rule that we have, and this is a rule that is in effect from the 6U age division all the way up to the 12U age division, and it is raking. And this is a brand new rule for 2017. It pretty much states that at any point in time, players are not allowed to pull the ball back using the back of their stick in order to pick it up. So players will be forced to scoop through the ball rather than trap it with the back of their stick, pull it back, and then pick it up.